Maya's hand caught Staff Sergeant Kovac's wrist mid-swing with a grip that turned his confident sneer into shock. 1 second, he was 240 pounds of Marine arrogance trying to humiliate her in front of 200 witnesses. The next, he was on his knees, his arm locked in a standing armbar that sent white-hot pain exploding through his shoulder. His mouth opened, but the only sound that came out was a strangled gasp that sounded dangerously close to begging. "You bastard," Maya whispered, applying just enough pressure to make his vision swim. "Tap out, Staff Sergeant. Or don't." His hand slapped the floor twice, desperate, panicked, pleading for mercy from the woman he'd tried to break. Before we continue, if you're enjoying this story, hit that subscribe button and stay until the end. Drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this reaches. Now, let's see how we got to this moment. The moment Maya Reyes walked into the SEAL Qualification Training Facility's dining hall that March evening, she could feel the weight of 200 pairs of eyes tracking her movement. It wasn't new. It had been happening every day for the past week since she'd arrived at Naval Amphibious Base Coronado as the first female graduate of BUD/S Class 358 to transition into advanced tactical training. She moved through the serving line with the same economical precision she brought to everything. No wasted motion, no excess energy, just purpose. Her tray collected portions of what passed for nutrition in military dining. Some kind of meat that might have been chicken, rice that had been cooked 3 hours too long, vegetables that had surrendered their color to industrial steamers. "Well, well, well." The voice came from her left, deep and deliberately loud enough to carry. Staff Sergeant Derek Kovac stood near the beverage station, his considerable frame blocking the path to the coffee urns. 3 other Marine instructors flanked him like a pack that had cornered something they considered prey. Maya had seen his type before. Hell, she'd been dealing with his type since she was the only girl in her East Los Angeles neighborhood who could outrun the boys, outclimb them, outfight them when they said her dead father would be ashamed of his daughter trying to act like a son. "Staff Sergeant," she acknowledged, her voice neutral, her eyes not quite meeting his. It was a technique her father had taught her when she was 8 years old. Never give them the confrontation they're looking for, but never show submission either. Acknowledge rank, not dominance. Kovac shifted his position, a deliberate movement that forced her to either stop or collide with him. She stopped. Her grip on the tray remained steady, her breathing unchanged. "You know what I was just telling my colleagues here?" Kovac said, his voice carrying that particular tone men use when they're performing for an audience. "I was saying how impressive it is that the Navy finally lowered the standards enough to get a female through BUD/S. Real progressive thinking. Very modern." One of the other Marines, a younger guy with the lean build of a distance runner, chuckled on cue. The sound felt rehearsed, like they'd workshopped this moment. Maya said nothing. Her father's voice echoed in her memory. "Mija, sometimes the strongest thing you can do is let a small man feel big. Let him have his moment. The truth doesn't need your defense." But Kovac wasn't satisfied with her silence. Silence, it seemed, was not the reaction he'd scripted for this performance. "I mean, what was it?" he continued, taking a half step closer. "Did they cut the runs in half? Maybe let you skip the surf torture? Or was it the obstacle course they made easier? I'm genuinely curious about the accommodations they made." Maya's jaw tightened by perhaps a millimeter. To anyone not watching closely, she appeared unchanged. But she felt the familiar fire in her chest, not anger exactly, but something colder, more focused. The same feeling she'd had during Hell Week, when an instructor had stood over her in the surf zone and told her she could quit any time, that no one would blame her, that she'd already made her point. She'd lasted another 4 days without sleep. "Permission to get my coffee, Staff Sergeant?" she said quietly. Kovacs' eyes narrowed. You know what your problem is, recruit? I'm not a recruit, Staff Sergeant. I'm a petty officer second class. The correction was factual, not confrontational, but it landed like a slap. Kovacs' neck flushed red, the color creeping up from his collar toward his squared jaw. Oh, I'm sorry, he said, his voice dripping with mock apology. Petty officer, my mistake. He drew out the rank like it was something distasteful. You think finishing BUD/S makes you equal to the men in this room? You think that little pin you're waiting to earn makes you a SEAL? I think I completed the same training they did, Staff Sergeant. No. Kovac leaned in, and Maya could smell the stale coffee on his breath, see the small scar above his left eyebrow that suggested a past fight. You completed a version of training, a modified version, a political statement wrapped in fatigues. But you're not equal, and you're going to wash out of this course, and everyone in this room knows it. Maya felt the moment crystallize around her. This wasn't just about Kovac. It was about every person in this dining facility who was watching to see how she'd respond. It was about the two other female SEAL candidates who were somewhere in the BUD/S pipeline behind her, wondering if the path was even possible. It was about the daughter of Vincent Reyes, deciding what kind of warrior she was going to be. Excuse me, Staff Sergeant, she said again, preparing to move around him. Kovac's hand shot out. It happened fast, but to Maya it felt like the world had shifted into the tactical time dilation her father had trained her to access. She saw the trajectory of his arm, the angle of his approach, the way his weight was shifting forward onto his lead foot. He was going to slap the tray from her hands, a deliberately humiliating gesture designed to make her scramble to clean up spilled food while he and his friends laughed. The physics of the moment spoke to her in a language she'd been fluent in since childhood. Force, angle, momentum, leverage. Her father's voice. Every attack is a gift, Mia. It tells you exactly where your opponent's mind is, where his balance is weak, where his ego has made him vulnerable. Maya's left hand released the tray smoothly, letting it drop the 6 inches to a nearby table surface where it landed without a sound. Her right hand moved in the same motion, intercepting Kovac's swinging arm at the wrist. The contact was precise. Her thumb found the median nerve cluster on the inside of his forearm. Her fingers wrapped around the radial bone. And she squeezed, with the grip strength she'd built through thousands of hours of climbing rope, doing pull-ups, hauling herself through obstacle courses. Kovac's confident expression flickered. He tried to pull his arm back, a reflexive response to unexpected resistance. But Maya had already pivoted, turning with his momentum rather than against it. Her left hand came up, palm striking the back of his elbow with just enough force to hyperextend the joint. The fundamental mechanics of the human arm are simple. When the elbow is locked and pressure is applied correctly, the body has one option to prevent structural damage. It goes where the pressure directs, in this case, down. Kovac's knees hit the polished floor with a sound that echoed through the now silent dining facility. His arm was trapped in a standing arm bar, his shoulder rotated at an angle that sent shooting pain down to his fingertips and up into his neck. His free hand slapped uselessly at her forearm, trying to find purchase, trying to break the hold. Maya leaned close, her voice dropping to a whisper that only he could hear. You bastard. You wanted to see if I earned my place? Here's your answer. She applied pressure, not enough to break anything, but enough to light up every nerve ending in his arm like a Christmas tree. Kovac's face went from red to pale, his mouth opening in a gasp that carried the edge of a whimper. Tap out, Staff Sergeant, Maya said, her voice still quiet, still controlled. Or don't. Your choice. For a moment that seems to stretch beyond the boundaries of normal time, Kovac's pride fought with his pain. His eyes darted around the room, seeing the shocked faces of his fellow Marines, the wide-eyed SEAL students, the mixture of horror and fascination in every witness. His hand slapped the floor twice, the universal submission signal. Maya released him immediately, stepping back and away in one smooth motion. Her hands returned to her sides, visible and non-threatening. Kovac scrambled backward, cradling his arm against his chest, his face a twisted canvas of humiliation and rage. The dining facility remained frozen in absolute silence. 200 people collectively holding their breath. Maya picked up her tray from where she'd placed it, collected a cup of coffee from the urn that Kovac was no longer blocking, and walked calmly to an empty table in the corner. She sat down, took a sip of the terrible coffee, and began eating her meal as if nothing had happened. But everything had happened. Across the dining facility, sitting at the officers' serving area with a tray of his own, Captain James "Hammer" Hammond had watched the entire sequence unfold. His 30 years in naval special warfare had given him the ability to assess combat in microseconds, to read the story that body mechanics tell. He'd seen the deliberate provocation. He'd seen Kovac initiate physical contact. And he'd seen a response that was so technically perfect, so precisely controlled, that it could only come from thousands of hours of training. Hammond pulled out his phone and typed a quick message to his senior enlisted advisor. "Pull the personnel file for PO2 Reyes. I want to know everything about her background, specifically her father." The response came back 2 minutes later. Vincent Reyes, Gunnery Sergeant, USMC, Force Recon, KIA Fallujah 2004. Posthumous Navy Cross. You knew him, sir. He was attached to your team before he cross-decked to the Marines. Hammond's eyes widened slightly. Vincent Reyes. The memory came flooding back. A quiet, unassuming Marine who could dismantle an opponent twice his size with the casual efficiency of someone solving a crossword puzzle. The best close-quarters combat instructor Hammond had ever known. And this was his daughter. Hammond stood, leaving his tray where it was, and walked toward the exit. But he paused near Kovac, who was still on the floor, being helped to his feet by his embarrassed Marine colleagues. "Staff Sergeant, my office. 15 minutes, Hammond said quietly. Kovac's eyes met Hammond's, and what he saw there made his already pale face go ashen. "Yes, sir." Maya finished her meal without looking up, but her peripheral vision tracked everything. She saw Kovac leave, supported by his friends who were careful not to make eye contact with her. She saw the SEAL students at nearby tables whispering to each other, some looking at her with newfound respect, others with what might have been fear. She saw Lieutenant Jake Chen, her assigned team leader for the upcoming field exercise, stand up from his table and walk toward her. He was 28, former college athlete, the kind of natural leader who wore authority comfortably. Chen sat down across from her without asking permission. "So," he said, his voice carefully neutral. "That was interesting." Maya took another sip of coffee. "Was it? You know you just made an enemy, right? Kovac's got friends, lots of them. Marines, SEALs, instructors across the entire special operations community." "I defended myself from an assault," Maya said, meeting his eyes for the first time. "That's what we're trained to do." Chen studied her for a long moment. "Where did you learn that technique? That wasn't standard BUD/S hand-to-hand." "My father taught me." "Your father must have been one hell of a teacher." "He was one hell of a man." Chen nodded slowly. "Look, I'm team leader for the field exercise next week. You're on my team. I need to know, are you going to be able to handle the pressure? Because Kovac's leading the opposition force instructor cadre, and you just humiliated him in front of the entire training command." Maya's expression didn't change. "Can you handle the pressure, Lieutenant? Because if we're on the same team, the target on my back is now on yours too." The honesty of it seemed to surprise him. Chen's mouth quirked in what might have been the beginning of a smile. "Fair point." He stood up. "Meet at the team room tomorrow, 0600. We're going to start planning for the exercise. I want to know what you're really capable of." After Chen left, Maya sat alone for another 10 minutes, finishing her meal with the same methodical precision she'd brought to eating since Hell Week, when every meal was a tactical operation against exhaustion and nausea. But her mind was elsewhere, running through the immediate future like a tactical problem set. Kovac would retaliate, not physically, not directly, but through the 1,000 small ways that institutional power could be weaponized. Lost gear requests, changed training schedules, convenient administrative errors that would make her look incompetent. She'd been prepared for this since the day she raised her hand to enlist. Since the day her mother had cried and begged her to choose a different path. Anything but following her father into the violence he'd never come home from. But sitting in that corner of the dining facility, Maya Reyes felt something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. A fierce pride. Not in hurting Kovac, there was no honor in that, but in the control she'd maintained. In the discipline that had turned his aggression into a lesson he'd never forget. Her father had taught her that strength wasn't about breaking others. It was about unbreakable self-control. She'd just proven she'd learned the lesson. In his office, Captain Hammond pulled up Maya's complete personnel file on his secure computer. The official record told one story. Top marks in almost every evolution at BUD/S. Middle of the pack on the physical tests, which was expected given the biological differences in upper body strength. Exceptional scores in tactical planning and decision-making under stress. But it was the unofficial notes that interested him. The observations from instructors who'd noticed something unusual about her approach to training. The way she seemed to absorb punishment without the typical emotional breakdown that Hell Week was designed to induce. The uncanny ability to read situations 3 steps ahead. Hammond clicked on the family background section. Mother, Elena Reyes, elementary school teacher, Los Angeles. Father, Vincent Reyes, gunnery sergeant, USMC, deceased. He opened another window and accessed the classified database he still had clearance for, the archive of Task Force Shadowline, the joint unit he'd served with before taking over training command. Vincent Reyes's file was heavily redacted, but Hammond had been there. He knew the parts the black ink covered. Vincent hadn't just been Force Recon. He'd been attached to Shadowline for 5 years, one of the most naturally gifted operators Hammond had ever worked with. The kind of man who could walk into a room full of hostiles and walk out with the hostages, leaving a trail of incapacitated enemies who never knew what hit them. Vincent had died saving 12 people. Hammond had been at the memorial service. He remembered the 8-year-old girl standing next to her mother, dry-eyed and rigid, processing grief in the same controlled way her father had processed combat. That 8-year-old was now the woman who'd just demonstrated she'd inherited more than her father's DNA. A knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. "Enter." Staff Sergeant Kovac walked in, his arm still held protectively across his chest. His face was a mask of barely controlled rage. "Sit down, Staff Sergeant," Hammond said, his voice neutral. Kovac sat, his posture rigid. Hammond didn't speak immediately. He let the silence build, a technique he'd learned decades ago. Silence made people uncomfortable. Discomfort made them talk. And when people talked to fill silence, they usually revealed more than they intended. Kovac lasted about 30 seconds. "Sir, I want to file an official complaint. That recruit, that
petty officer assaulted me without provocation in front of the entire training command. She needs to be removed from the course and charged." Hammond leaned back in his chair. "Is that your official statement?" "Yes, sir. You're stating, for the record, that Petty Officer Reyes assaulted you without provocation." "Yes, sir." Hammond nodded slowly.
He turned his computer monitor so Kovac could see the screen. On it, security camera footage from the dining facility played in silent black and white. The footage showed Kovac blocking Maya's path, showed him leaning in, talking, showed his arm swinging toward her tray in a clear, deliberate motion, showed her defensive response. Kovac's face went from red to white. "Would you like to revise your statement, Staff Sergeant?" Hammond asked quietly. The silence stretched again, but this time Kovac had nothing to say. "You initiated physical contact with a student," Hammond continued, his voice still quiet, but carrying the weight of absolute authority. "You created a hostile environment through verbal harassment. You used your position as an instructor to intimidate and belittle. And when your target defended herself using appropriate and controlled force, you were humiliated in front of your peers." Hammond paused, letting each word land like a hammer blow. "Here's what's going to happen. You will write a formal apology to Petty Officer Reyes. You will cease all contact with her except in official training capacities, where you will treat her with the same professional courtesy you would show any other student. You will report to the base psychologist for an evaluation on gender bias and professional conduct. And if I receive one more complaint about your behavior toward any female personnel, I will personally ensure your next duty station is counting snowflakes in Alaska. Am I clear?" Kovac's jaw clenched so hard Hammond could hear his teeth grinding. "I said, am I clear, Staff Sergeant?" "Crystal clear, sir." Dismissed. Kovac stood, moved toward the door, then paused. "Permission to speak freely, sir?" Hammond nodded once. "She doesn't belong here," Kovac said, the words coming out like poison he'd been holding under his tongue. "This isn't about bias. It's about standards. It's about maintaining the integrity of what it means to be a SEAL. If we start making exceptions—" "Staff Sergeant," Hammond interrupted, his voice cutting through the room like a blade. "Vincent Reyes was one of the best operators I ever served with. He could clear a room faster than any SEAL I knew. He saved my life twice. And that woman out there is his daughter. She's not an exception to the standard. She is the standard. You just had the misfortune of learning that lesson the hard way." Hammond stood, and even though Kovac had 3 inches and 40 pounds on him, the captain's presence seemed to fill the room. "Now get out of my office before I decide that disciplinary action isn't sufficient, and we explore court-martial options for assault on a subordinate." Kovac left without another word. Later that night, in the small room she'd been assigned in the base barracks, Maya sat on her rack and stared at the photograph she kept on her nightstand. Her father, in his Marine Corps dress blues, the Navy Cross ribbon on his chest, his slight smile suggesting he knew some cosmic joke the rest of the world hadn't figured out yet. She'd been 8 when they'd handed her that folded flag, 12 when she'd first asked her mother to tell her the real story of how he died, 16 when she'd decided she would follow his path, no matter what it cost. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Team room, 0600, come ready to work, Chen." A second text arrived 15 seconds later, also unknown. "Good work today. Your father would be proud. Hammond." Maya stared at that second message for a long time. Hammond had known her father. The realization opened questions she didn't have answers to yet. But those questions would have to wait. Tomorrow, she had to prove to Chen and the rest of her team that the Chow Hall incident wasn't a fluke, that she could contribute tactically, strategically, and operationally. And somewhere in this same building, Kovac was probably planning how to make the upcoming field exercise a personal crucible designed to break her. Let him plan, Maya thought, lying back on her rack. Let him scheme and plot and coordinate with his Marine friends. She'd survived Hell Week. She'd survived the death of her father. She'd survived growing up as the only girl in a neighborhood where being Vincent Reyes's daughter meant you had a target on your back and a legacy you could never escape. One angry Marine instructor was just another obstacle to navigate. She closed her eyes and let sleep take her. But her last conscious thought was something her father used to say when she'd ask him about combat. Mija, the fight you win without throwing a punch is the fight you've already won. Control is the weapon they never see coming. Tomorrow, she'd show them what control looked like when it wore a naval special warfare uniform. And somewhere in the darkness of the base, 200 people were having conversations about what they'd witnessed. The story would spread, distorted, exaggerated, simplified, but the core truth would remain. A 26-year-old woman had faced down institutional intimidation and won, without raising her voice, without losing her composure, without becoming the angry, aggressive stereotype they'd expected. She'd done something more dangerous than winning a fight. She'd made them respect her. And that, more than any physical victory, was what would change everything. The 0600 team meeting came faster than Maya's 3 hours of sleep suggested possible. She walked into the team room carrying her notebook and a cup of coffee that tasted like motor oil mixed with regret. Lieutenant Chen was already there, along with 2 other SEAL students she recognized from the Chow Hall. Both had been sitting 3 tables away when Kovac hit the floor. Petty Officer Reyes, meet your teammates, Chen said, without preamble. Petty Officer Luis Morales, sniper qualified, and Petty Officer Tyler Williams, our comms and tech specialist. Morales was early 30s, quiet intensity radiating from him like heat from asphalt. He nodded once. Williams looked barely old enough to buy beer, all nervous energy and fidgeting hands. We call him Preacher, Williams said, pointing at Morales, because he never talks unless he's got something worth saying. I'm Ghost because you never shut up, Chen interrupted. Maya, they call me Drifter. We've got 6 days to prepare for the field exercise. Kovac's running the opposition force, which means he's going to make it personal. It's already personal, Maya said. Chen smiled without humor. Yeah, we noticed. So, here's the situation. We're going into the Chocolate Mountains for 5 days. 40 miles of movement to contact, locate the HVT, execute a raid. Standard stuff. Except Kovac's going to be tracking us the entire time. And he's got authorization to use pain compliance training weapons. Define pain compliance, Maya said. Paintballs modified to fire at 400 feet per second. Morales spoke for the first time, his voice carrying a slight Texas accent. Twice the normal velocity. They'll raise welts, maybe crack ribs if they hit right. Technically legal for training. Practically borderline sadistic. Williams jumped in. I accessed the equipment manifest. Kovac requisitioned 30 cases of those rounds. That's like 6,000 shots, for an exercise that usually uses maybe 500. He's hunting you, Chen said bluntly. Question is, are you going to be a liability or an asset when he finds us? Maya met his eyes. I navigated 20 miles of coastline in zero visibility fog during BUD/S using nothing but a compass and timing. I can read terrain like some people read books. And I've been shooting since I was 10 years old. You tell me if that's a liability. Chen studied her for a long moment, then pulled out a topographical map and spread it across the table. Then prove it. We insert here at grid November Sierra 4729. HVT is somewhere in this 20-kilometer box. How would you approach it? Maya leaned over the map, her finger tracing elevation lines. Water sources. Humans need water every 72 hours, maximum in desert heat. There are only 3 natural springs in that box. I'd surveillance all 3, eliminate the 2 that don't show activity, then focus on the 3rd. That's 3 days just watching water holes, Williams said. That's 3 days Kovac is searching 40 square kilometers while we're watching 3 spots that total maybe 600 square meters, Maya countered. Economy of force. Morales' expression shifted slightly, not quite a smile, but close. I like her. Chen nodded. Okay, you're on navigation and tactical planning. Preacher, you're our eyes once we find them. Ghost, you keep our communications locked down. I'll run point security. We train together every day until insertion. No one goes anywhere alone. Kovac's going to try to isolate you, Maya. He's going to make things disappear, create situations where you look incompetent. We don't let that happen. Why are you helping me? Maya asked. Because I watched you put a man twice your size on the floor without breaking a sweat, Chen said. Because my sister tried out for Bud/S 2 years ago and washed out during Hell Week after an instructor told her she was wasting everyone's time. And because if you fail, they'll use it as proof that women can't hack it. I don't believe that. So we're going to make damn sure you succeed. The vulnerability in his admission hit Maya harder than she expected. Your sister joined the Coast Guard, Chen said. She's happy. But she shouldn't have been pushed out by assholes who were afraid she'd show them up. He rolled up the map. We start land navigation drills in 2 hours. Get some breakfast. And Maya? Watch your back. She left the team room feeling something she hadn't felt since arriving at Coronado. Not quite belonging, but the possibility of it. That possibility died 3 hours later, when she returned to her barracks room and found her locker open, the lock cut clean through. Every piece of her gear was gone. Body armor, night vision equipment, rucksack, even her backup uniforms. Thousands of dollars worth of military equipment vanished. Maya stared at the empty locker, her mind processing the tactical problem. Reporting it would trigger an investigation, which meant missing training time, which meant falling behind, which meant proving Kovac's point that she was a distraction. Not reporting it meant showing up to training without gear, which looked unprofessional and incompetent. She pulled out her phone and called Chen. Someone cleaned out my locker, she said when he answered. Silence on the other end, then, how much? Everything except what I'm wearing. Son of a bitch. Chen's voice went cold. Stay there, I'm coming to you. He arrived 15 minutes later with Morales and Williams in tow. Morales took one look at the cut lock and whistled low. Bolt cutters, clean cut, someone who knew what they were doing. Kovac's too smart to do this himself, Chen said, but I'd bet my next paycheck he knows who did. Williams was already on his phone, fingers flying across the screen. I'm pulling security camera footage from the hallway. Give me 2 minutes. You can access base security systems? Maya asked. I can access anything with an IP address, Williams said without looking up. And, okay, this is interesting. There's a 40-minute gap in the footage from this morning. 0400 to 0440. Camera just went black. That's not a malfunction, Morales said. That's deliberate. Chen's jaw tightened. We report this to Hammond. This isn't harassment anymore. This is theft of government property and destruction of military equipment. No, Maya said. 3 sets of eyes turned to her. If we report it, Kovac wins. He gets exactly what he wants. Me looking like a victim, filing complaints, needing protection. I show up to training with borrowed gear, and I keep moving forward. That's noble and stupid, Chen said. You can't just absorb this. Watch me. Chen looked at Morales, who shrugged. It's her call, LT. Fine, Chen said. But I'm documenting everything. Photos, timestamps, the whole thing. When this goes sideways, and it will go sideways, we're going to have evidence that this was a coordinated campaign. They spent the next hour scrounging replacement gear from teammates willing to loan equipment. The body armor was 2 sizes too large. The night vision mount didn't fit her helmet properly. The rucksack's straps had been adjusted for someone 8 inches taller. But it would work. It had to work. The land navigation drill that afternoon was brutal. Chen pushed them through 12 kilometers of coastal terrain in under 3 hours, a pace that left even Williams gasping. Maya kept up, the oversized body armor chafing her shoulders raw, but she kept up. When they finished, Morales jogged up beside her. You're bleeding through your shirt. Maya looked down. He was right. Red stains were spreading across the shoulders of her uniform, where the ill-fitting armor had ground her skin away. I'm fine. You're not fine. You're leaving a blood trail. That's a tactical liability. He was right. Maya felt the anger rising in her chest, not at Morales, but at the situation, at Kovac, at every obstacle that kept appearing in her path like landmines. I'll get it addressed, she said. That night she sat in the barracks bathroom at 2300, using a mirror to apply antibiotic ointment to the raw patches on her shoulders. The door opened and she quickly pulled her shirt back on. Senior Chief Marcus Webb walked in. He was 50-something, built like a fire hydrant, with a face that looked like it had been carved from saddle leather. He was the senior enlisted advisor for the entire SQT program, the most respected voice in the building. Heard you had some gear problems, Webb said, leaning against the sink. It's handled, Senior Chief. Is it? Webb's eyes were sharp. Because I also heard your locker got hit. And I heard about the Chow Hall incident. And I'm hearing things from the instructors that concern me. Maya said nothing. She'd learned that senior chiefs didn't ask questions they didn't already know the answers to. You know what your father told me once? Webb said. We served together in 2002, before he went to the Marines. He said the hardest part of being a warrior isn't facing the enemy. It's facing the people on your own side who think you're the enemy. Maya's head snapped up. You knew my father? Vincent Reyes saved my life in Afghanistan. We were ambushed in a village. Taliban had us pinned in a compound. Your dad went through 4 of them like they were paper targets. Didn't even seem angry about it. Just efficient. Webb's expression softened slightly. He was the calmest man under fire I ever met. Looks like you got that from him. Senior Chief, why are you telling me this? Because tomorrow, Hammond's calling you to his office. He's going to offer you a way out. Medical reclass, administrative transfer, something that lets you leave with your dignity intact. And I need you to understand something before you walk into that meeting. Webb straightened up, his voice dropping into the command tone that made junior sailors stand straighter without thinking about it. Your father didn't die so you could quit when things got hard. He died because he believed some things were worth fighting for. You being here, proving that women can do this job, that's worth fighting for. So when Hammond makes that offer, you remember that every person who comes after you is going to face the same choice. And your decision sets the precedent. He walked to the door, then paused. Your father would be proud of you, Maya. Don't let the bastards take that away. Then he was gone, leaving Maya alone with her reflection and a knot in her throat she couldn't quite swallow. The meeting with Captain Hammond the next morning was exactly as Webb had predicted. Hammond's office was sparse, a few commendations on the wall, a photo of him with his SEAL team from 20 years ago, and a credenza holding a folded flag in a triangle case.
"Sit down, petty officer," Hammond said. Maya sat, her back straight, her hands resting on her knees. Hammond didn't waste time. "I'm going to be direct with you. The theft of your equipment, the harassment, the hostile environment. It's creating a situation that's untenable. I can have you transferred to another command. You'd keep your rating, your rank, everything. You could finish your SEAL training at a different facility, away from Kovac and his allies." "Is that an order, sir?" "It's an option." Maya met his eyes. "With respect, sir, I'm not interested in options that involve running away." Hammond's expression didn't change. "This isn't about running away. It's about tactical repositioning. Sometimes the smart move is to disengage and find better ground."
"Sir, if I transfer out, every woman who comes after me will face the same harassment, and they'll know that when it got hard, I left. That's not a precedent I'm willing to set." Hammond leaned back in his chair. "Your father said almost exactly the same thing to me once. Different situation, same principle." He pulled a file from his desk drawer. "What do you know about Task Force Shadowline?" The question hit Maya like cold water. "Nothing, sir. Should I?" "Your father was assigned to Shadowline for 5 years before he died. It's a joint special operations unit that pulls the best operators from every branch. The missions are classified at a level that most people in this building don't have clearance to even know the unit exists." Hammond opened the file and turned it so Maya could see. Inside was a photograph of about 20 operators in non-standard uniforms, faces hard with the kind of experience that only comes from repeated exposure to violence. Her father stood in the back row, and next to him, "That's you," Maya said, spotting a younger version of Hammond. "Your father and I did 7 deployments together. He was the best close-quarters combat specialist I've ever worked with. Not the biggest, not the strongest, but the most controlled. He used to say that amateurs practice until they get it right. Professionals practice until they can't get it wrong." Hammond closed the file. "You put Kovac on the floor using a technique Vincent taught me in 2001. That wasn't luck. That was thousands of hours of training from a man who knew exactly what he was doing." "He started teaching me when I was 6, Maya said quietly. "After school, before dinner, we'd practice. He called it playing. My mom hated it." "Your mother was smart to hate it. Vincent knew the kind of life he was preparing you for. He knew that if you followed this path, you'd face exactly the kind of resistance you're facing now." Hammond's voice softened slightly. "The question is, are you ready for what comes next? Because Kovac isn't going to stop. The field exercise is where he's going to make his move. He's got authorization to push the limits of training safety, and he's going to use it." "I can handle Kovac, sir." "Can you handle 8 Marines working together to isolate and overwhelm you? Can you handle being hunted by people who have made it their personal mission to break you?" Maya thought about her father, about the story he'd told her when she was 12, and asked why he did such dangerous work. He'd said, "Mija, the world is full of people who'll tell you what you can't do. Warriors are the people who show them they're wrong." "Yes, sir," Maya said. "I can handle it." Hammond studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Then you should know that I'm embedding an observer team in the exercise. Officially, they're there to evaluate the effectiveness of the new training protocols. Unofficially, they're there to document everything Kovac does. If he crosses the line, we'll have evidence. But that also means you can't retaliate. You maintain discipline, you stay professional, and you trust the system to hold him accountable." "And if the system doesn't hold him accountable?" Hammond's expression went cold. "Then I will. Personally." Maya stood. "Permission to speak freely, sir?" "Granted." "My father died following orders. He died protecting people who needed protecting. If I'm going to honor his memory, It's not going to be by hiding behind regulations and hoping the system works. It's going to be by proving I belong here through performance. So with respect, sir, I don't need observers. I need you to let me do my job." Hammond stood as well. "You're dismissed, petty officer. And Maya, your father was one of the bravest men I knew. Not because he wasn't afraid, but because he was afraid and did the job anyway. Remember that when things get hard." As Maya left the office, she felt the weight of expectation settling on her shoulders, like the ill-fitting body armor. Every step she took was being watched, evaluated, judged. One mistake, and she'd be the example used to justify keeping women out of combat. One success, and she'd be dismissed as an exception. The only way forward was perfection. 4 days later, her team stood in the pre-dawn darkness at the helicopter insertion point. Chen ran through final checks, his voice calm despite the tension Maya could see in the set of his shoulders. Morales cleaned his rifle for the 3rd time, the movements meditative. Williams fidgeted with his radio equipment, testing frequencies that had already been tested. And Maya stood quietly, her mind running through the terrain maps she'd memorized, the contingency plans she'd developed, the 100 small details that would mean the difference between success and failure. 30 seconds! The helicopter crew chief shouted over the rotor noise. Chen looked at each of them. "Remember the plan. We move fast and quiet. We get eyes on the HVT. We execute the mission. And we don't give Kovac a target to hit. Understood?" 3 voices responded in unison. "Understood." The helicopter door slid open and cold desert air blasted into the cabin. Maya could see the landing zone below, a narrow canyon floor, dark and uninviting. "Go, go, go!" They fast-roped down, one after another, boots hitting the ground in rapid succession. The helicopter pulled away immediately, its noise fading into the darkness. And then there was only silence, broken by the sound of 4 people breathing and the distant call of a coyote. Chen raised his fist. The team froze. He pointed to Maya, then pointed northwest. She'd planned their initial route, a narrow ravine that would provide cover from observation and lead them toward the first water source on her list. They moved out, Maya on point navigation, her compass in one hand and her rifle in the other. Behind her, she could feel the others matching her pace, trusting her to lead them through terrain she'd only seen on maps. 3 hours later, they'd covered 8 miles. The sky was starting to lighten in the east, turning from black to deep purple. Maya called a halt in a cluster of rocks that provided overhead cover from drone surveillance. "How far to the first water source?" Chen asked, his voice barely a whisper. 6 more miles. We'll be there by 0900 if we maintain pace." "Can we maintain pace?" Maya looked at Williams, who was already breathing hard from the weight of his communications equipment. "We'll maintain pace." They did. By 0830, they were overlooking a small spring that bubbled up from between 2 rocks and formed a pool no bigger than a bathtub. Morales set up his sniper rifle in a position that gave him complete coverage of the water. The rest of them settled in to wait. That's when Williams's radio crackled to life. It was the exercise control frequency, supposed to be for emergencies only. "All teams, be advised. Opposition force has been authorized to use enhanced training munitions. Expect contact. This is now a full-intensity exercise. Control out." Chen's jaw tightened. "Enhanced training munitions. That's the paintballs." "Kovac's loaded for bear," Morales said from his position. "And we just broadcast our location by acknowledging that transmission." Williams looked stricken. "I didn't acknowledge." "You didn't have to," Maya said, her mind racing through the tactical implications. "Our radio received the signal. That means it pinged the network. If Kovac's monitoring network activity, he knows there's a receiver in this grid square." Chen swore softly. How long do we have? If he's moving fast, 30 minutes. Then we move. Now. Maya, pick us a route that— No, Maya interrupted. We split up. Preacher and Ghost, you take the planned route along the ravine. Make noise, leave tracks, make it obvious. Drifter and I circle around and come at them from the flank. When Kovac follows your trail, we hit him from behind. Chen shook his head. That's exactly what he wants. He wants to isolate you. Then let's use that against him. He's expecting me to run or hide, so let's give him a fight instead. The decision hung in the air between them. Finally, Morales spoke up. It's tactically sound, and I'd rather choose the ground for the fight than have it chosen for us. Chen looked at Maya. If this goes wrong— It won't, Maya said with more confidence than she felt. 20 minutes later, Maya and Chen were moving through a parallel ravine, heading back toward the direction they'd come from. The idea was simple. Kovac would be tracking Morales and Williams's obvious trail, expecting to find all four of them. Instead, he'd find two. And while he was occupied with them, Maya and Chen would have the advantage of surprise. It was a good plan, right up until the moment it fell apart. They rounded a bend in the ravine and found themselves face to face with 8 Marines, all armed with the high-velocity paintball weapons. And standing at the front, wearing a smile that promised violence, was Staff Sergeant Derek Kovac. Well, well, Kovac said, his weapon trained on Maya's chest. Look what we have here. The recruit and her boyfriend, all alone. No witnesses, no cameras, just us and the desert. He stepped closer. You know what I love about training accidents? They happen all the time. Equipment malfunctions, rounds go where they shouldn't, injuries that look worse than they are, but sure do hurt like hell. Chen raised his weapon, but 3 Marines immediately trained their paintball guns on him. The message was clear. Make a move, and they'd all fire. This isn't training anymore, Kovac, Chen said. This is assault. This is reconditioning, Kovac corrected. Teaching your little pet project here that some jobs aren't meant for women. Now, here's what's going to happen. You're going to put your weapon down, Lieutenant, and then Miss Reyes and I are going to have a conversation about standards and respect. A painful conversation. Maya's mind raced through options. 8 opponents, all armed, all positioned to support each other. Chen was outmaneuvered. Any move she made would result in both of them getting shot. Unless she gave Kovac exactly what he wanted. Let him go, Maya said. This is between you and me. He's not part of it. Kovac's smile widened. Now we're talking. See, that's the problem with you types. You think you can fight your own battles, but you can't. You always need someone to protect you. He gestured to his Marines. Let the lieutenant walk away. He's not worth the ammunition. Chen looked at Maya, his expression clearly saying, don't do this. But Maya knew they were out of options. The only way Chen survived this was if she gave Kovac his target. Go, she told Chen. That's an order. I'm the ranking officer here, and I'm telling you to complete the mission. Find Preacher and Ghost. Get to the HVT. Do your job, Lieutenant. Chen hesitated one more second, then slowly backed away, his weapon still raised until he was 20 meters down the ravine. Then he turned and ran. Maya faced Kovac alone, 8 weapons pointed at her, and smiled. So, she said, you ready for round 2? Kovac's laugh was ugly, the sound of a man who thought he'd finally cornered his prey. He lowered his paintball weapon slightly, confidence radiating from every muscle. Round 2? Sweetheart, there wasn't a round 1. What happened in the chow hall was a fluke. Out here, with my people, on my ground,
This is where you learn your place. Maya didn't move.
Her weapon was still in her hands, but 8 barrels were trained on her. The math was simple and brutal. Your people? These Marines are here to train, not to settle your ego problems. One of the younger Marines, couldn't have been more than 22, shifted uncomfortably. Kovac noticed, and his voice snapped like a whip. "Corporal Davis, you got something to say?" "No, Staff Sergeant." "Then keep your weapon up and your mouth shut." Maya filed that away. Dissension in the ranks. Not all of them were comfortable with this. She let her gaze sweep across the 8 faces, reading each one. 3 were completely with Kovac, their expressions hard and eager. 4 were uncertain, following orders but not liking them. And 1, the corporal, looked actively unhappy. "You know what the best part about this location is?" Kovac was circling her now, forcing her to turn to keep him in view. "We're 15 miles from the nearest checkpoint. No drone coverage in this canyon. Just rocks and heat and us. Anything that happens here, it's our word against yours. And there's 8 of us." "9, Maya corrected. "You forgot to count yourself. Or did the humiliation scramble your math skills?" Kovac's face flushed red. "Put the weapon down. Now." "Or what? You'll shoot me with paintballs? Go ahead. I've been shot with real bullets in training. Your toys don't scare me." That was a lie. Those high-velocity rounds could crack ribs, rupture organs if they hit wrong. But Kovac didn't need to know her fear. "I said, put it down." Maya calculated angles, distances, escape routes. The ravine wall was too steep to climb quickly. The mouth of the canyon was blocked by 4 Marines. Her only option was through them, and that meant she dropped the weapon. Kovac's smile returned. "Smart girl. Maybe you're finally learning." He turned to his Marines. "Ramirez, Santiago, secure her weapon. The rest of you maintain perimeter. If her boyfriend comes back, light him up." 2 Marines moved forward cautiously. Maya raised her hands, palms out, the universal sign of surrender. But her father's voice was in her head, speaking words he told her when she was 14, and a boy twice her size had cornered her after school. "Mija, when someone thinks you're helpless, that's when you're most dangerous. They stop thinking of you as a threat, and that's when you strike." Ramirez reached for her weapon. The moment his hand touched the barrel, Maya moved. Her left hand shot out, clamping onto his wrist. Her right palm drove upward into his nose, not hard enough to break it, but hard enough to fill his eyes with involuntary tears and send him stumbling backward. Santiago tried to grab her from behind, but she'd already dropped low, sweeping his legs. He went down hard. "Light her up!" Kovac screamed. The first paintball caught her in the ribs. The impact felt like being hit with a baseball bat. The second took her in the shoulder, spinning her halfway around. The third would have hit her in the face if she hadn't been moving, diving behind a cluster of rocks that provided minimal cover. 3 more rounds exploded against the stone, sending chips of rock spraying. Maya's ribs were on fire, her shoulder already swelling. But she was behind cover, and they'd just wasted 6 rounds in panic. "Cease fire!" Kovac's voice carried over the ringing in her ears. "I want her alive and conscious. Move up and flush her out." Maya's mind raced. She had maybe 30 seconds before they surrounded her position. No weapon, injured, outnumbered 8-1. The tactical situation was impossible. Unless she changed the rules. She pulled off her helmet and threw it hard to her left. It clattered against rocks, drawing immediate fire. While 4 Marines were focused on the noise, Maya went right, scrambling along the ravine floor, using every bit of cover. Her father had taught her urban evasion techniques, how to move through hostile territory by becoming part of the terrain, invisible through stillness and timing. She pressed herself into a crevice between two boulders, barely wider than her body. Through the gap, she could see Kovac directing his Marines with hand signals. They were moving in a standard clearing pattern, professional and coordinated. These weren't amateurs. They were Force Recon Marines, trained in the same small unit tactics she knew. "She's got nowhere to go," Kovac was saying. "Ramirez, Santiago, you two loop around the north side. Everyone else squeeze the pocket. I want her pushed back toward the dead end." The dead end. Maya's mental map of the terrain crystallized. This ravine terminated in a 20-foot rock face about 60 meters ahead. Kovac was herding her into a kill box. She waited until two Marines passed her position, their attention focused ahead. Then she ghost-stepped out of the crevice and fell in behind them, matching their pace exactly, staying in their visual blind spot. Her father called it walking with the enemy, using their own formation against them. They moved forward 15 meters. 20. Maya's breathing was controlled, silent, even though her ribs screamed with each breath. 30 meters. One of the Marines started to turn, some instinct warning him. Maya grabbed a fist-sized rock and threw it hard to the left. It hit metal, somebody's equipment, with a sharp clang. Both Marines spun toward the sound, and Maya was already moving backward, melting into another cluster of rocks. "Contact left!" one of them shouted. "Hold fire!" Kovac screamed. "That's your own people, you idiots!" The formation collapsed into confusion. Marines were calling out positions, trying to establish fields of fire without shooting each other. And in that chaos, Maya saw her opening. She sprinted for the ravine wall, not the dead end ahead, but the western wall where erosion had carved a series of hand and footholds. She'd seen it on the terrain maps, a technical climbing route that required strength, balance, and absolute commitment. "She's climbing! North wall!" Paintballs exploded around her, but she was already 10 feet up, her fingers finding grips that would support her weight for exactly 1 second before she had to move to the next. 12 feet. 15. A round caught her boot heel, nearly knocking her off the wall, but she powered through, her arms burning. At 20 feet, she pulled herself over the lip and rolled away from the edge just as a barrage of paintballs peppered where she'd been. She was on a narrow plateau now, breathing hard, her ribs sending lightning bolts of pain through her chest. Below, she could hear Kovac screaming orders. "Ramirez, Santiago, circle around and cut her off! The rest of you, up that wall! Move!" Maya didn't wait to see if they could follow. She ran along the plateau, putting distance between herself and the pursuit. Her mind was calculating time and distance. Chen would have reached Morales and Williams by now. They'd know she was in trouble. But even if they came back for her, they were 3 against 8, and Kovac had positioned his people to control the terrain. She needed to even the odds. The plateau narrowed, forcing her to slow down. Ahead, she could see where it reconnected with the main canyon floor through a steep descent. If she could reach that. "Going somewhere?" Maya spun. Kovac stood 30 feet behind her, breathing hard from the climb, but with his weapon raised and steady. "I came up the easy route while my boys took the hard way. Told you, I know this terrain. I know every path, every shortcut." He advanced slowly. "End of the line, Reyes." Maya's back was to the drop-off. Nowhere to run. Her ribs were screaming. Her shoulder was swelling so badly she could barely lift her right arm. And Kovac had her dead to rights. "Before you shoot me," Maya said, her voice steady despite the pain, "I need to know something. Is this really about standards? About maintaining the integrity of the program? Or is this about you being so goddamn terrified that a woman could do your job better than you?" Kovac's finger tightened on the trigger. You don't do my job better. You got lucky in a dining hall with cameras and witnesses. Out here, luck runs out. You're right, Maya said. Out here, skill is all that matters. So let's find out who has more. She charged him. The move was insane, suicidal, exactly what no tactical manual would ever recommend. Charging directly at an armed opponent with no cover and no weapon was the fastest way to get killed. But Maya wasn't following manuals anymore. She was following instinct, training, and the ghost of her father's voice telling her that sometimes the only way out is through. Kovacs fired. The first round would have caught her center mass, but she'd already committed to a slide, her boots going out from under her, dropping beneath the projectile's trajectory. She slid between his legs like a baseball player stealing home, and as she passed, her hand shot up and grabbed his ankle. She yanked hard. Kovacs' world tilted. His second shot went wild as he fought for balance, and then Maya was behind him, using his own momentum to send him forward. He caught himself before going over the edge, but it cost him his weapon. The paintball gun clattered away across the stone. They faced each other now, both unarmed, both hurt, both running on adrenaline and fury. Come on then, Kovacs growled, dropping into a fighting stance. Let's see what Daddy taught you. He swung first, a powerful right hook aimed at her head. Maya slipped it by inches, feeling the wind of his fist pass her ear. She countered with a strike to his floating ribs, but he twisted, taking it on his oblique instead. They circled each other, trading blows, both landing hits, both absorbing punishment. Kovacs was bigger, stronger, with reach advantage and weight advantage. But Maya was faster, more technical, and she'd been training since she could walk. Every combination he threw, she read and countered. Every time he tried to use his strength to grapple, she used leverage to escape. Why won't you just quit? Kovacs' breathing was labored now. Blood ran from his split lip. Why can't you just admit this isn't for you? Because it is for me. Maya's voice cracked with emotion she'd been holding back for weeks. This is what my father died for. This is what I was raised for. You don't get to take that away because your ego can't handle being wrong. She went low, shooting for his legs in a perfect double-leg takedown. But Kovacs had been expecting it. He sprawled, his weight crushing down on her injured shoulder. Maya gasped in pain, and Kovacs capitalized, wrapping his arm around her neck in a guillotine choke. Tap out, he hissed in her ear. Tap out, or go to sleep. The choke tightened. Maya's vision started to tunnel. She could feel her consciousness beginning to slip. This was it. This was how it ended. Alone on a plateau in the desert, choked unconscious by a man who hated what she represented. But then she heard it. The distinctive crack of a high-powered rifle echoing through the canyon. Once. Twice. 3 times. Kovacs' grip loosened in confusion. What the? Maya drove her elbow backward into his solar plexus. As he gasped and released the choke, she rolled away, sucking in desperate breaths. Through her blurred vision, she could see Marines on the canyon floor below dropping their weapons and raising their hands. Standing on the opposite ridge, barely visible in the morning light, was Morales with his sniper rifle. He wasn't shooting at people. He was shooting their weapons, destroying the paintball guns with precision fire that left the Marines unharmed, but disarmed. And climbing up the ravine wall behind Kovacs' scattered team were Chen and Williams, along with... Maya's heart stopped. Captain Hammond was with them, and behind him were 4 military police personnel with cameras, recording everything. Staff Sergeant Kovacs! Hammond's voice boomed across the canyon, amplified by a megaphone. This exercise is terminated. You and your personnel will lay down all weapons and remain in place. Kovac stared in disbelief. "You can't! This is a training exercise!" "This is an assault!" Hammond's voice was cold fury. "I've got 4 cameras that just recorded you choking a student. I've got testimony from Corporal Davis, who called in a safety violation 20 minutes ago. And I've got enough evidence to court-martial you and every Marine who participated in this." Davis, the young corporal who'd looked uncomfortable, he'd called it in. Kovac's face went from red to white. He looked at Maya, then at the MPs climbing toward them, then back at Maya. "You set this up. This was all a setup." "No," Maya said, getting to her feet despite the pain. "You set yourself up. I just gave you enough rope." "I'll fight this. I'll fight every charge. My career, your career, is over." Hammond had reached the plateau now, slightly winded from the climb, but radiating authority. "You violated training safety protocols. You assaulted a student. You conspired to injure a service member, and you did it all in front of witnesses and cameras. You're done." 2 MPs moved to restrain Kovac, but he pulled away from them. "She doesn't belong here. Women don't belong in combat. I was protecting the standard." "You were protecting your ego." Hammond's voice cut through Kovac's rant like a blade. "And you just proved exactly why we need people like Petty Officer Reyes. Because she maintained discipline under impossible circumstances. She followed the rules even when you abandoned them. She showed more courage and control than you've shown in your entire career." The MPs took Kovac's arms, and this time he didn't resist. As they led him away, he looked back at Maya one last time. The hatred in his eyes had transformed into something else. Not respect, not quite defeat, but recognition. He'd thrown everything he had at her, broken every rule, abandoned every principle, and she was still standing. Hammond turned to Maya. "Are you injured?" "Ribs are bruised, shoulders swollen. I can still move, sir." "You're going to medical for evaluation. That's an order." Hammond's expression softened slightly. "But first, I need to say something. Your father would be proud of you. Not because you won, because you refused to become what Kovac accused you of being. You could have fought dirty. You could have escalated. Instead, you maintained your discipline, and you let him destroy himself." Maya felt the tears coming and fought them back. "Permission to complete the mission, sir? My team still has an HVT to locate." Hammond actually smiled. "The HVT is secured. Lieutenant Chen executed the raid 40 minutes ago while Kovac was distracted chasing you. Your team completed the mission. You all pass." Chen appeared at the top of the plateau, followed by Williams and Morales. Chen's face was tight with concern. "Maya, I'm sorry. I should never have left you. You followed orders," Maya interrupted. "You completed the mission. That's what we're supposed to do." "I called it in," Chen said. "The second I met up with Preacher and Ghost, I radioed Captain Hammond and told him Kovac had isolated you. That's when he scrambled the MPs." Morales approached, his rifle slung across his back. "I had you in my scope the whole time you were on this plateau. If Kovac had gone for a weapon, or if that choke had gone on 3 more seconds, I was taking the shot, training exercise or not." Williams was practically bouncing with nervous energy. "I jammed all of Kovac's communications. He couldn't coordinate with his team, couldn't call for backup, couldn't do anything. It was awesome." Maya looked at the 3 of them, her team, her brothers in arms, and felt something shift in her chest. Not pain this time, but something warmer. "Thank you." Hammond gestured toward the descent. "Let's get off this plateau before someone else gets hurt. MPS, take statements from all of Kovac's Marines. I want to know who participated willingly and who was following orders under duress. There's going to be a full investigation, and I want every detail documented." As they started down, Maya saw Corporal Davis sitting on a rock, his head in his hands. She walked over to him. "You called it in?" Davis looked up, his young face twisted with guilt. "I should have called it in earlier. I should have stopped it before." "You called it in when it mattered," Maya said. "That took courage, especially knowing how Kovac would react." "My dad's a Marine, 30 years. When I called him last week and told him about the Chow Hall incident, you know what he said? He said the Corps he served in didn't stand for bullies. Said if I saw something wrong, I had a duty to report it, no matter what it cost me." Davis wiped his eyes. "I'm probably going to get hazed to death for this." "No, you're not," Hammond said, having overheard. "You're going to be commended for moral courage under pressure, and anyone who gives you grief answers to me personally." The descent took 30 minutes. By the time they reached the canyon floor, Maya's adrenaline was fading, and the pain was becoming impossible to ignore. Each breath felt like broken glass in her chest. A medical helicopter was landing in a clearing 200 meters away. Hammond pointed to it. "That's your ride to base medical, non-negotiable." Maya wanted to argue, but her body was shutting down. She nodded. As the medics loaded her into the helicopter, she saw Kovac being led to a separate vehicle, his hands zip-tied behind his back. He looked broken, defeated. Nothing like the aggressive predator who'd blocked her path in the Chow Hall. Chen climbed into the helicopter beside her. "I'm coming with you." "You don't have to." "Shut up and let your teammates take care of you," Chen said. "That's an order, petty officer." As the helicopter lifted off, Maya looked down at the desert spreading below them. Somewhere in that vast expanse, her father had trained for the missions that would eventually kill him. He'd walked this same path, faced these same challenges, proven himself in the same crucible. And now, so had she. "Hey," Chen said quietly. "You know what they're going to call you after this, right? The woman who survived Kovac's hunt. The SEAL candidate who fought off 8 Marines. It's going to be a legend." Maya closed her eyes against the pain and exhaustion. "I don't want to be a legend. I just want to do the job." "Too bad," Chen said with a slight smile. "You don't get to choose what people remember, but you do get to choose what happens next. And what happens next is you heal, you come back, and you finish this program. Because you're not doing it just for yourself anymore. Every woman who comes after you is going to be walking a path you cleared." The helicopter banked toward the coast, and through the window, Maya could see the ocean appearing on the horizon, vast and blue and infinite. Her father used to tell her that the ocean was the ultimate teacher, patient, relentless, and absolutely unforgiving of mistakes. The SEALs had chosen it as their proving ground for a reason. She'd proven herself in the desert, but the real fight, the fight to transform a culture, to change minds, to show that excellence had no gender, that fight was just beginning. And unlike Kovac, who'd fought with ego and aggression, Maya would fight with discipline, competence, and the unshakable knowledge that her father's daughter didn't quit. Not ever. The base hospital at Coronado smelled like antiseptic and institutional coffee, a combination that made Maya's empty stomach twist. She'd been in the examination room for 2 hours while doctors poked, prodded, and took enough x-rays to probably give her a third eye. 3 cracked ribs, severe bruising across her shoulder and torso, mild concussion, dehydration. Nothing that wouldn't heal. The door opened and Captain Hammond walked in, followed by a woman Maya didn't recognize. She was civilian clothes, late 40s, with the kind of eyes that missed nothing. "Petty Officer Reyes, this is Dr. Sarah Mitchell from the Naval Inspector General's office," Hammond said. She's here to take your statement about the incident. Maya sat up straighter, despite the pain lancing through her ribs. Yes, sir. Dr. Mitchell pulled up a chair and opened a tablet. I've reviewed the video footage and spoken with multiple witnesses, but I need to hear it from you. In your own words, what happened out there? Maya walked her through it. The isolation, the confrontation, the fight. She kept her voice level, factual, even when describing the moment Kovacs' arm had closed around her throat. Mitchell's expression never changed, but her stylus moved rapidly across the screen. And at any point during this encounter, did you feel your life was in danger? Mitchell asked. Yes, ma'am. When Staff Sergeant Kovac had me in the chokehold, I believed if I lost consciousness, the situation could escalate beyond my ability to defend myself. Did you attempt to de-escalate? I attempted to evade. Staff Sergeant Kovac pursued. Mitchell made another note. I understand there were previous incidents of harassment. Why didn't you report them? The question Maya had been dreading. She met Mitchell's eyes. Because I wanted to prove I could handle it. Because I didn't want to be seen as someone who couldn't take the pressure. Because every woman who comes after me needs to know they can survive the worst this culture can throw at them and still complete the mission. That's a heavy burden to carry alone, Mitchell said quietly. It's the burden my father carried. It's the burden every SEAL carries. Being able to operate under impossible circumstances is the job. Mitchell closed her tablet. For what it's worth, petty officer, your restraint and discipline probably saved Kovacs' career from being even shorter. If you'd seriously injured him, regardless of justification, it would have given his allies ammunition to use against you. Instead, you let the system work. That took more courage than fighting back. After Mitchell left, Hammond remained. He looked tired, older than he had that morning. The preliminary investigation findings are clear. Kovac violated multiple regulations. He'll face court-martial within 60 days. The Marines involved are being evaluated individually. Davis and 3 others are being cleared. The rest are facing disciplinary action. What happens to me? Maya asked. Hammond's expression softened. You heal. You complete SQT. And then we talk about your future. He paused. The video of the Chow Hall incident leaked. It's already got 2 million views online. The headlines are calling you the woman who took down the Marine bully. You're about to become very famous, and not everyone is going to like it. Maya's stomach dropped. Sir, I didn't want... Doesn't matter what you wanted. It's out there now, which means you've got a choice. You can let the narrative be written by people who weren't there, or you can control it yourself. Tomorrow at 1400, there's a press conference. The base PAO wants you to make a statement. What kind of statement? The kind that sets the record straight. That this isn't about you being a victim. It's about standards being maintained, regardless of who violates them. Maya thought about it. A press conference meant cameras, reporters, questions she might not be prepared to answer. But Hammond was right. If she didn't speak, someone else would speak for her. I'll do it, she said. But I need to see my team first. Hammond nodded. They're in the waiting room. Have been since you got here. Chen, Morales, and Williams crowded into the examination room the moment Hammond left. Williams looked like he'd been crying. Morales's face was unreadable as always. Chen just looked relieved. You scared the hell out of us, Chen said, when Morales got you in his scope and saw Kovacs choking you. I had the shot, Morales interrupted. My finger was on the trigger. Another 2 seconds and I was taking it. Court-martial be damned. Maya felt something catch in her throat. You would have ended your career for me. You're our teammate, Morales said simply. That's what teammates do. Williams pulled out his phone. Dude, you're viral. Like, everywhere. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Everyone's talking about you.
They're calling you the Seal Warrior Princess, and it's kind of awesome, but also kind of problematic because it reduces your actual accomplishment to a Disney ghost. Shut up, Chen said gently. He turned to Maya. The point is, what you did out there changed something.
I've already gotten calls from 3 female BUD/S candidates who heard about what happened. They want to know if the program is really changing, if they'll really be given a fair shot.
What did you tell them?
Maya asked. I told them to ask you themselves. Because you're about to become the face of this, whether you want to be or not. That night, alone in her hospital room, Maya's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number.
You don't know me, but I was in BUD/S class 352. I quit during Hell Week after an instructor told me I was wasting everyone's time and should go back to being a secretary. I've regretted it every day since. What you did today gave me the courage to put in for a second try. Thank you. Sarah K.
Maya stared at the message for a long time. Then came another, and another. By midnight, she'd received 47 messages from women, some in the military, some civilians, some still in high school, all saying the same thing. She'd shown them it was possible. The weight of it was crushing. The press conference the next day was held in a sterile briefing room with too many cameras and not enough air. Maya stood at the podium in her dress uniform, her ribs taped so tightly she could barely breathe. Hammond stood to her right, the base commander to her left. A reporter from CNN raised her hand. Petty Officer Reyes, some are calling this incident proof that women aren't ready for combat roles. How do you respond? Maya gripped the podium. I respond by pointing out that I defended myself against an aggressor twice my size, using the exact same training every SEAL receives. I maintained discipline under circumstances designed to make me fail. If that's evidence women aren't ready for combat, then I'm not sure what standard you're using. Another reporter. Do you believe Staff Sergeant Kovac was motivated by sexism? I believe Staff Sergeant Kovac was motivated by fear. Fear that the standards he built his identity around were changing. Fear that his assumptions about who could do this job were wrong. Fear that if a woman could excel at special operations, it meant everything he thought made him special was actually just basic competence. The room went silent. Maya hadn't planned to say that, but once the words were out, she knew they were true. A third reporter. What do you want people to take away from this? Maya looked directly into the cameras. I want women to know that you belong anywhere you're willing to work hard enough to be. I want men to know that your worth isn't diminished by women's success. It's enhanced by working alongside the best, regardless of gender. And I want everyone to know that my father, Gunnery Sergeant Vincent Reyes, taught me that real warriors don't prove themselves by dominating others. They prove themselves by protecting those who need protection and holding the line when it matters. Her voice cracked slightly on her father's name, but she pushed through. He died doing that, and I'm going to honor his memory by doing the same. The press conference ended 10 minutes later. As Maya walked out, Hammond fell into step beside her. That was good, honest, the kind of statement that's going to resonate. It was the truth, sir. The truth doesn't always play well in politics, but in this case, I think it will. Hammond paused outside the briefing room. I need to tell you something. The court-martial for Kovac is set for 6 weeks from now. You'll have to testify. I expected that. What you might not expect is that Kovac's defense attorney is going to argue that you provoked him, that the Chow Hall incident was an overreaction on your part, and that he was justified in his concerns about your presence in the program. Maya felt anger flash through her. He choked me unconscious, and we have it on video. His attorney knows he's going to lose,
but they're going to try to damage your credibility in the process.
Make you look aggressive, unstable, someone who shouldn't have been there in the first place. Hammond's expression hardened. I'm telling you this so you're prepared. The trial is going to be ugly. 6 weeks later, Maya sat in a military courtroom and watched Derek Kovac's career disintegrate in real time. The prosecution presented video evidence, testimony from Corporal Davis and 3 other Marines who'd been horrified by Kovac's actions, and medical reports documenting Maya's injuries. Kovac's attorney tried. He really did. He painted Kovac as a dedicated professional, concerned about declining standards. He suggested Maya had used her gender to gain preferential treatment. He even implied that the Chow Hall incident had been staged. Then the prosecution showed the unedited video of Kovac choking Maya while she was defenseless. The courtroom went silent. Even Kovac's attorney seemed to deflate. The verdict came back in 40 minutes. Guilty on all charges. Reduction in rank to sergeant. Bad conduct discharge. Forfeiture of all pay and allowances. It was the death of a military career. As the MPs led him away, Kovac looked at Maya one last time. She expected hatred, anger, defiance. Instead, she saw something that looked like resignation. Maybe even understanding. That night, she received a letter. It had been left at the base post office with instructions to deliver it to her personally. Petty Officer Reyes, I don't expect you to read this. I don't expect forgiveness. But I need to write it anyway. You were right about me. I was afraid. Afraid that if women could do my job, it meant I wasn't special. Meant all the sacrifice, all the pain, all the years I spent proving myself, it wasn't as significant as I thought. And instead of dealing with that fear like an adult, I tried to break you. I wanted you to quit so I could tell myself I was right. But you didn't quit. You showed more discipline, more courage, more professionalism than I've shown in 15 years of service. My daughters are 8 and 6. They asked me why I'm not a Marine anymore. I told them I forgot what it meant to be one. I hope they grow up in a world where women like you are the standard, not the exception. I hope they're stronger than their father. Derek Kovac. Maya read it 3 times, then folded it carefully and put it in the box where she kept her father's letters. Redemption, she thought, wasn't something she could give or withhold. It was something Kovac would have to earn through the rest of his life. 2 months after the trial, Maya graduated SQT at the top of her class. Captain Hammond personally pinned the trident to her uniform. Your father would be proud, Petty Officer First Class Reyes. Welcome to the teams. Petty Officer First Class. They'd promoted her ahead of schedule, citing exceptional performance under adverse conditions. Maya touched the gold insignia on her chest, the eagle, anchor, and trident that marked her as a Navy SEAL. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me yet. I'm about to make your life much more complicated. Hammond handed her a manila folder. You're being assigned to SEAL Team 3, Charlie Platoon. Report to the platoon chief on Monday. Maya opened the folder. Inside was her assignment paperwork and a note in Hammond's handwriting. You've proven you belong. Now prove you can excel. Her platoon chief turned out to be Senior Chief Marcus Webb, the same man who told her about her father weeks earlier. He greeted her arrival with characteristic bluntness. Reyes, you're getting a lot of attention right now. Media, politicians, everyone wants a piece of you. Here's how this works in my platoon. I don't care about your publicity. I care about your performance. You carry your weight, you're one of us. You fold, I'll send you packing. Clear? Crystal clear, Senior Chief. Good. You're assigned to the breacher position. Think you can handle that? Breacher meant being first through the door on raids, responsible for explosive entry and immediate room clearing. It was one of the most dangerous positions in special operations. "Yes, Senior Chief." Webb almost smiled. "Your dad was a breacher, too. Best I ever worked with. Let's see if you inherited his skills along with his discipline." The next 8 months were a blur of training. Maya deployed to East Africa with her platoon, conducting counterterrorism operations in Somalia and Kenya. On her third mission, a hostage rescue in Mogadishu, she was the breacher who cleared the room holding 2 American aid workers. She moved through the door, identified 3 hostiles, engaged 2 with her rifle, and disarmed the third with a technique her father had taught her when she was 12. The hostages walked out alive. Maya walked out with a Navy Commendation Medal with Valor device. But it was the quiet moment after the mission, when Senior Chief Webb pulled her aside, that meant more than any medal. "Your father would have done it exactly the same way," Webb said. "Fast, precise, controlled. You're not trying to be him. You're honoring him by being the best version of yourself. Keep it up." A week after returning stateside, Maya received an email. No sender address, encrypted, with a single photograph attached. She opened it and felt her breath catch. It was the task force shadowline photo Hammond had shown her months ago. The one with her father and a younger Hammond standing among elite operators from every branch. But now, photoshopped into the image, was her official SEAL portrait. She'd been inserted next to her father, as if she'd been there all along. Below the image, one line of text. "He showed you the path. We're offering the destination. If you're ready, reply with, 'Shadows walk where eagles fear, Hammond.'" Maya stared at the screen for a long time. Shadow line. The classified unit her father had served with, the missions he'd never talked about, the legacy he'd left in blood and silence. She could stay with SEAL Team 3, build a career in conventional special operations, be the public face of women in combat roles, use her platform to change culture and policy. Or she could step into the shadows where her father had walked, where the missions were darker, the stakes higher, the sacrifices greater. Her phone buzzed, a text from Chen. "Heard through the grapevine you're getting recruited for something big. Whatever you decide, know that you changed everything here. The next class of SQT has 4 women. They're all here because you proved it was possible. That legacy matters." Another text, this one from Morales. "Ghost says you're going underground. If true, stay safe. If not, we should grab beer. Either way, your family." Maya looked at the shadowline photo again. Her father's slight smile seemed to be telling her something. Maybe it was permission. Maybe it was a warning. Maybe it was just the understanding that some paths choose you as much as you choose them. She opened her laptop and typed a response to the encrypted email. "Shadows walk where eagles fear." The reply came back instantly. "Welcome to the dark. Report to Building 147, North Island, 0600, Monday. Tell no one. Bring nothing. You're about to learn what your father really did. Hammond." Maya closed the laptop and looked at the photo of her father on her nightstand. He was younger there, before Shadowline, before the missions that would eventually kill him. But even then, she could see the quiet intensity, the controlled power, the absolute certainty of purpose. "I'm following you into the dark, Dad," she whispered. "Hope I'm ready for what I find there." She wasn't. But, ready or not, Monday was coming. And with it, a world her father had inhabited, but never spoken of. A world where women like Maya Reyes didn't exist yet. She was about to change that. Outside her window, the sun was setting over Coronado, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Somewhere in that same sunset, other warriors were preparing for missions they'd never talk about. Other families were saying goodbye to loved ones who might not come home. And one 26-year-old woman was standing at the threshold of a legacy she'd spent her entire life preparing for, even when she didn't know it existed. Maya Reyes, Petty Officer First Class, Navy SEAL, daughter of Vincent Reyes, was about to walk into the shadows. And she was going to walk in with the same quiet discipline, the same unbreakable control, the same absolute certainty of purpose that her father had carried. Because strength wasn't about breaking others. It was about holding yourself together when everything else was falling apart. And in the shadows, that strength was the only thing that kept you alive. Building 147 on North Island looked like every other nondescript military structure Maya had ever seen. Concrete, small windows, zero personality. But the armed guards at the entrance and the biometric scanners suggested it was anything but ordinary. Hammond met her in a windowless briefing room at 0600 sharp. He wasn't alone. 6 other people sat around a conference table, faces she didn't recognize, all with the same hard-worn look of operators who'd seen things they'd never talk about. Petty Officer Reyes, welcome to Task Force Shadowline, Hammond said without preamble. Everything discussed in this room is classified above top secret. Before we continue, you need to understand what you're agreeing to. If you walk through that door, your life as you know it ends. Your SEAL team assignment becomes a cover story. Your deployments will be to places that don't officially exist. And if something goes wrong, the United States government will deny you ever worked for us. Maya's throat went dry. Why me? A woman at the far end of the table spoke. She was late 50s, silver hair pulled back tight, with scars on her hands that suggested decades of combat. Because you're Vincent Reyes' daughter. Because you've already proven you can operate under impossible pressure. And because we need someone who can do what your father did. Walk into chaos and create order through pure discipline. You knew my father? I served with him on 4 deployments. He saved my life twice. The woman's expression softened slightly. I'm Colonel Sarah Chen, Army Special Forces. I run Shadowline. Your father was one of the best operators we ever had. The mission that killed him in Fallujah? That wasn't random combat. He was extracting a high-value intelligence asset from an Al-Qaeda cell. He got the asset out alive, along with 11 other hostages. He died buying them time to reach the helicopter. Maya felt like the floor had dropped out from under her. My mother told me he died in a routine patrol. Your mother was told what we needed her to be told, Hammond said gently. Vincent requested that. He didn't want you growing up knowing the truth about his work. He wanted you to have a normal childhood. Did he know I'd end up here? Colonel Chen smiled slightly. He told me once that if you followed him into the service, you'd either quit during Hell Week or end up being better than he ever was. Looks like he was half right. The briefing lasted 4 hours. Maya learned about operations her father had conducted in Afghanistan, Iraq, Yemen, Somalia. She saw after-action reports written in his distinctive handwriting. She watched helmet camera footage of him moving through hostile compounds with the efficiency of a machine designed for violence. But what hit her hardest was the final video. Her father, looking exhausted and older than she'd ever seen him, sitting in a safe house recording what the timestamp indicated was his last message before the Fallujah operation. If you're watching this, it means I didn't make it out, his voice said through the speakers. Sarah, tell my daughter that I loved her more than life itself. Tell her that every mission I did, every risk I took, was so she could grow up in a world with less evil in it.
And tell her that if she ever finds her way to you, she's ready. Train her like you trained me, and trust her like I trusted you." The video ended. Maya's cheeks were wet. She hadn't realized she was crying. "So," Colonel Chen said quietly, "are you in?" Maya wiped her eyes. "What's the mission?" "Right now, you train. 6 months of specialized instruction in advanced interrogation resistance, deep cover operations, high-value target elimination. Then we deploy you to Syria."
There's a human trafficking network we've been tracking for 2 years. They're selling women and children to terrorist organizations. We need someone who can infiltrate as a victim, gather intelligence, and execute when the time comes. "You want me to pose as someone being trafficked?" "We want you to do what your father did. Become whoever the mission requires. The question is, can you?" Maya thought about the women who'd messaged her after the Kovac incident. She thought about her father dying to save people he'd never met. She thought about the choice between the public legacy and the shadow legacy. "I can do it," she said. "But I have one condition." Chen raised an eyebrow. "You're not really in a position to negotiate." "After Syria, I want to go back to BUD/S as an instructor. I want to train the next generation. Because my father died in the shadows, but my fight is in the light. Women need to see that this path is possible. They need role models who aren't hiding in classified programs. Hammond and Chen exchanged looks. Finally, Chen nodded.
2 years with Shadowline. Then we'll talk about transferring you to instruction. Deal? Deal.
The next 18 months were the hardest of Maya's life. The training pushed her beyond anything BUD/S had demanded. She learned to survive torture that left no marks, to speak 3 new languages fluently, to kill silently in a dozen different ways. She deployed to Syria, infiltrated the trafficking network, and spent 4 months undercover gathering intelligence while watching horrors she'd carry forever. When the raid finally came, Maya was the one who unlocked the doors. 37 women and children walked out alive. The traffickers didn't. Her second deployment was to Yemen, tracking an ISIS commander who'd been responsible for bombing 3 refugee camps. Maya spent 6 weeks as a journalist, gaining access to the commander's inner circle. When the strike team moved in, she was the one who identified the target and neutralized his bodyguards. But it was the quiet moments between deployments that changed her. Sitting in safe houses, talking to the other Shadowline operators, hearing stories about her father that her mother had never known. Learning that Vincent Reyes had been more than a warrior. He'd been a teacher, a mentor. Someone who'd believed that the true measure of an operator was what they left behind. 22 months after joining Shadowline, Maya walked into Colonel Chen's office and said the words she'd been preparing for weeks.
"I'm done. I fulfilled my commitment. I want to go back."
Chen didn't argue. "Hammond said you would. He also said your father did the same thing after 5 years. Some warriors are meant for the shadows. Others are meant to light the way." She handed Maya a folder. "Your orders. You're being assigned as the primary hand-to-hand combat instructor for BUD/S. First female in that role. Think you can handle the pressure?" Maya smiled.
"After everything I've been through? Teaching wet, cold, miserable students how to fight properly sounds like a vacation."
6 months later, Maya stood in front of her first BUD/S class. 214 students, including 7 women. The largest female cohort in program history.
"My name is Senior Chief Petty Officer Reyes," she said, her voice carrying across the training compound. "Some of you know my story. Some of you think you do. Here's the only part that matters.
I'm here to train you to the highest standard the naval special warfare community has ever maintained. That standard doesn't care about your gender, your race, your background. It only cares whether you can do the job. I'm going to teach you how to fight, how to survive, and how to win. The rest is up to you." A young male student in the front row raised his hand. "Senior Chief, is it true you put a Marine instructor in the hospital?" Maya's expression didn't change. "I defended myself against an assault using appropriate force. The instructor's injuries were a consequence of his choices, not my actions. Any other questions?" The training class went silent. Over the next 3 years, Maya developed a reputation as the toughest, fairest instructor in the program. She pushed everyone to their limits, regardless of gender. When a male instructor made a disparaging comment about a female student's performance, Maya had him removed from the training cadre within 24 hours. When a female student tried to use her gender to get preferential treatment, Maya pulled her aside and said words that cut deeper than any punishment. "You don't want special treatment. You want to earn the same respect everyone else earns. Act like it." The student graduated top of her class, but it was the letter that arrived in Maya's office during her 4th year as an instructor that stopped her cold. The return address was from a youth facility in San Diego. The sender? Derek Kovac. "Senior Chief Reyes, I don't know if you'll read this, but I wanted you to know what happened after the court-martial. I hit bottom pretty hard. Lost my career, lost my pension, lost my identity. Spent a year working construction and drinking too much. Then my oldest daughter asked me why I hated women so much. She was 10 years old, and that question broke something in me. I got help, real help, therapy, anger management, the whole thing. And I started volunteering at a youth center that teaches martial arts to at-risk girls. Girls who've been abused, abandoned, told they're worthless. I teach them what you taught me, that strength isn't about dominating others. It's about controlling yourself when everything's chaos. Last month, one of my students defended herself against an attacker. She used the same armbar you used on me. She walked away safe. I wanted you to know that the lesson you taught me is being passed on. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm just telling you that you changed more than you know. Derek Kovac." Maya read the letter 3 times. Then she wrote back, "Mr. Kovac, keep teaching those girls. That's the redemption you're looking for. You won't find it in my forgiveness. You'll find it in their strength. Senior Chief Reyes." 5 years after returning to BUD/S, Maya was promoted to Master Chief, the senior enlisted leader for all West Coast SEAL training. She was 33 years old, the youngest person ever to hold the position, and the first woman. Her first major decision was creating a specialized program for addressing harassment and discrimination. Her second was mandating that every instructor go through bias training developed by actual psychologists, not just PowerPoint presentations. The culture shifted slowly, then all at once. Within 2 years, female representation in BUD/S classes jumped to 15%. The attrition rate for women dropped to match the rate for men, and most importantly, the conversation changed from "Can women do this?" to "How do we make sure everyone who can do this gets the chance?" 10 years after the Chow Hall incident with Kovac, Maya stood in front of a graduating BUD/S class that was 40% female. The first class in history to achieve gender parity. "You proved something this institution needed to learn," Maya told them during the graduation ceremony. "That excellence is measured by performance, not demographics. That the only question that matters is, can you do the job? And you answered that question the same way every SEAL before you answered it. Through blood, sweat, and unbreakable determination." She paused, looking at the diverse faces before her. My father told me once that every warrior has two fights. The first is against the enemy. The second is against the people who tell you you're not good enough. You won both fights. Now go show the world what that means. After the ceremony, a young female graduate approached Maya. She couldn't have been more than 23, with the lean build of a distance runner and eyes that held quiet fire. Senior Chief, can I ask you something? Make it quick, Petty Officer. How did you keep going? When Kovac was trying to break you, when the whole system seemed designed to make you fail, how did you not quit? Maya thought about that question. She thought about her father's voice in her head during Hell Week. She thought about the moment Kovac's hand closed around her throat. She thought about every obstacle, every setback, every moment she'd wanted to walk away. I kept going because quitting would have meant all the women after me would face the same battles I fought. I kept going because my father didn't die so I could give up when things got hard. And I kept going because the only way to change a system is to be so undeniably good at your job that the system has to acknowledge you. She met the young woman's eyes. What's your name? Petty Officer Sarah Chen, Senior Chief. Maya's breath caught. Related to Lieutenant Jake Chen? He's my uncle. He told me about you, about what you did for him and his team. Said you were the reason he stayed in the Navy. The young woman smiled slightly. He also said you were the scariest instructor he'd ever met, and that I should be terrified of you. Your uncle was smart. Maya allowed herself a small smile. Where are you headed? SEAL Team 7. After that, who knows? Maybe I'll end up teaching here someday, training the next generation. Maybe you will, Maya said. And when you do, remember this. The fight isn't over just because you won. It's over when the next person doesn't have to fight at all. That night, Maya visited her father's grave for the first time in 2 years. She knelt in the grass, traced his name on the headstone with her fingers. I did it, Dad, she whispered. I walked your path. I learned what you knew, and I used it to change everything you left behind. Tears ran down her cheeks. The women graduating now, they don't know your name. They don't know what you sacrificed, but they're standing on the foundation you built. The discipline you taught me, the strength you showed me, it's in every one of them now. The wind picked up, rustling through the trees overhead. Maya closed her eyes and let herself remember her father's face, his voice, the way he'd taught her to throw a punch by making it a game. I hope you're proud, she said. I hope wherever you are, you can see what your daughter did with the legacy you left. I didn't just survive the fight. I won it. And then I made sure no one else would have to fight it alone. She stood, brushed the grass from her knees, and walked back to her car. Tomorrow, she had another class starting. Tomorrow, there would be new challenges, new obstacles, new battles to fight. But tonight, she allowed herself to feel what she'd earned through a decade of blood and discipline and unbreakable will. She'd changed an institution. She'd transformed a culture. She'd proven that her father's lessons about strength through control weren't just survival tactics. They were the foundation for building something better. 3 months later, Maya received an email from the office of the Chief of Naval Operations. She was being considered for promotion to Senior Enlisted Advisor for all of Naval Special Warfare, the highest enlisted position in the entire community. The interview was brutal. Flag officers grilling her on policy, strategy, culture change. But when Admiral Richardson, the CNO himself, asked her what she'd learned from the Kovac incident, Maya didn't hesitate. I learned that institutional change doesn't happen through complaints or protests. It happens when someone proves the institution wrong through undeniable performance. I learned that discipline is the most powerful weapon a warrior possesses. And I learned that my father was right. Strength isn't about breaking others. It's about holding yourself together when everyone's trying to break you. Richardson nodded slowly. Your father was a hell of an operator. One of the best I ever worked with. Maya's head snapped up. You knew him? We deployed together in 2001, Afghanistan. Vincent saved my entire team when we were ambushed in the Korangal Valley. He killed 3 Taliban fighters with his bare hands and carried my wounded radio man 2 miles to the extraction point. Richardson's expression was unreadable. He was also the calmest man under fire I ever met. Looks like his daughter inherited that. 2 weeks later, the promotion was official. Master Chief Maya Reyes became the Senior Enlisted Advisor for Naval Special Warfare, responsible for over 10,000 personnel across every SEAL team, Special Warfare Combatant Craft Crewman Unit, and Support Command in the Navy. She was 36 years old. Her first official act was creating a task force to review every harassment complaint filed in the past 5 years. Her second was instituting a zero-tolerance policy for discrimination. Her third was personally meeting with every female SEAL candidate currently in training. At one of those meetings, a young woman asked her the question she'd been asked 100 times. How do you deal with people who still don't think women belong here? Maya's answer was the same as always. I prove them wrong, every single day. Through performance, discipline, and results. And eventually, they either accept reality or they get out of the way. 15 years after the Chow Hall incident, Maya stood in that same dining facility at Coronado. It looked exactly the same. Same serving lines, same tables, same industrial smell. But everything was different. Women moved through the facility without second glances. Female instructors ate alongside male instructors. A young female SEAL sat at the table where Kovac had once blocked Maya's path, laughing at something her teammate said. Maya got her coffee from the beverage station, no one blocked her way, and sat down at a corner table. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Senior Chief, you don't know me. My name is Maria Kovac. I'm Derek Kovac's daughter. I just graduated from the Naval Academy. I want to go to BUD/S. My father said if I was serious, I should talk to you first. He said you're the reason he learned what real strength looks like. Would you be willing to meet with me? Maya stared at the message for a long moment. Then she typed back, Report to my office Monday at 0800. Bring your physical fitness test scores and your academic transcripts. And understand that if you make it through BUD/S, it won't be because of your last name or who your father was. It'll be because you earned it, just like everyone else. The response came immediately. I wouldn't want it any other way, Senior Chief. See you Monday. Maya set down her phone and looked around the dining facility one more time. Somewhere in this building, there were probably still people who thought women didn't belong in special operations. Somewhere, there were still instructors who made it harder than it needed to be. Somewhere, the fight continued. But it was no longer her fight alone. It was a fight being waged by hundreds of women who'd walked through the door she'd kicked open. Women who'd proven themselves through the same crucible of pain and discipline and unwavering commitment that had forged every warrior before them. Her father had walked in shadows so others could live in light. Maya had walked through fire so others could walk through doors. And now, sitting in the same dining facility where a bully had tried to break her, drinking terrible coffee and watching a new generation of warriors prepare for challenges she'd help them overcome, Maya Reyes understood what her father had been trying to teach her all along. Strength wasn't the power to break others. It was the discipline to hold yourself together when everything else was falling apart. It was the courage to stand up when everyone said, "Sit down." It was the absolute refusal to let anyone else's fear become your limitation. Her father had lived that truth. Maya had proven it. And the women coming after her would carry it forward into battles not yet fought, in places not yet known, against enemies not yet named. The legacy wasn't about one woman who'd taken down a Marine instructor. It wasn't about viral videos or press conferences or promotions. The legacy was in every woman who would never have to fight the same battles Maya fought, because Maya had fought them first and won. That was the only victory that mattered. That was the only legacy worth leaving. And as Maya Reyes finished her coffee and stood to face whatever came next, she knew with absolute certainty that her father would be proud. Not because his daughter had become a warrior, but because she'd used her strength to make sure other daughters wouldn't have to fight alone. The fight was never about proving women belonged. It was about creating a world where no one would ever question it again. And that fight, Maya knew, was one she'd already won.